Hi, Viral, can you hear me?
Hey, hi Ruchita. Yeah, loud and clear. Yeah,
Awesome. Great.
yeah. Okay. We'll start. So hi everyone. Welcome to Clarion Call, a masterclass from Google. Uh, Let me introduce myself. I am Viral Jansari. I work for Pepperfry as a head of digital marketing. Uh, I'll give you a little brief about Clarion Call, so that everybody is aware about Clarion Call. So Clarion Call 4.0. This is the fourth year of Clarion Call. Uh, this is the flagship business contestant event from IIM Calcutta Alumni Association, Mumbai. This year, we are organizing this in association with IMCIP, that is the IIM Calcutta Innovation Park. This is a unique platform which brings in best of the incubation, mentoring, fundraising opportunity, along with a lot of credits, freebies, and prizes for all the startups. Uh, we have seen around 500 startups applying for this event this year with over 1,000 registrations. We have already selected top 50 finalists who will be further scrutinized for the top 20 position, who will fight for that one final position, final event that is happening on 1st of May. Apart from that, we are also organizing various masterclass from the industry leaders, which will help all the startup founders to grow their business. Some of these masterclasses are uh, masterclass from Arca privacy, who are the privacy experts. So that's on the data privacy and how do you equip to protect your most important, your data and customer digital assets. So that's what that masterclass was about. Second masterclass was from Freshworks. How do you scale from 1 to 10 million revenue? That was from Abhishek Murthy, chief of staff of at Freshworks. Then we had third masterclass from AWS, to build and scale your startup on AWS. So that session broadly covered AWS startup programs and resources. That was by Satish Hariharan, senior solutions architect, startup ecosystem AWS. And now we have our fourth masterclass from Google, basically growth acceleration with Google. We have with us Miss Ruchita Agrawal, Google India head, new business skills, and we'll further have one more masterclass from seasoned entrepreneur, that is that is Mr. Shubrat Pani, who's co-founder of One Assist, who is also actively involved in organizing this event. So that is about managing cash and burn for early stage survival. So I'll give you a brief intro about Ms. Ruchita Agrawal. She is India head, new business scale at Google India Private Limited, where she, along with her team, is responsible for introducing Google digital marketing solution to corporates for them to achieve desired business and growth objectives. She is also a global mentor to Google for Startups Accelerator program, where she mentors select startups on business development, growth partnerships, marketing, people development, and management, building organization and setting KPIs. So I'll hand over the floor to Ms. Ruchita for her to take it forward. Over to you, Ms. Ruchita. Ma'am, you are muted. Folks, just give us a second. She lost her network. She's joining back.
Hi, apologies. My electricity went away and I got locked off. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, ma'am, we can hear you.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay. So, Viral, I missed the last couple of minutes. Let me know when you want me to start.
Yes, ma'am. Folks, one request to you. Just keep yourself on mute. So we'll open the floor to questions at the end. Also, ma'am is in a little short of time. So if possible, we'll try to cover all the questions in the session itself. If that is not possible, what we'll do is we'll collate all the sets of questions and try to send all the responses to your queries by the end of the session. I hope that's clear. So I just have one request. Please keep yourself on mute for the session. Thanks, ma'am. Over to you. I'll take the screen share. I'll give you the. I'll
Yes.
do the presentation.
Viral, if you can just help me with the presentation.
Yeah.
So, while Viral is bringing up the presentation, okay, great, the presentation's coming up. I just wanted to set the context of what the conversation today will be like. I'm going to be concentrating on, talking to you about how the digital landscape in India is evolving and how it's expected to evolve over the next couple of years, so that, for your respective industries and for your respective businesses, you have, an idea of how the evolution is happening and what parts of the country are evolving, and how is it that the consumer preferences are changing. While some of this may be familiar and some of this may not be familiar, my intent will be to serve today's conversation as just a conversation starter. And I'll be very honest, because I didn't really know really what industries and what segments of businesses each of you are involved in or running for your own entrepreneurial ventures. So I've kind of kept it fairly high level and fairly generic, because one of the advantages of digital that does come along with it is that digital actually allows you to be very specific to the industry that you're in, allows you to be very relevant for your consumer set, and allows you to be very impactful when you're planning your own marketing strategies. And because of a combination of these 3-4 things that kind of come into the play, every marketing discussion that we have, or every business strategy discussion that we have with entrepreneurs or with traditional large companies, we come up with a very bespoke and a highly customized solution. And the power of digital, because you can make it extremely relevant to your audiences, and because you can be very specific in what you're doing, it does kind of bring with itself that added element that if you really truly want to make a difference and you want to measure that difference, you have to be very, very customized, and you have to be very, very bespoke. And because today's session, we are kind of restricting ourselves or concentrating on giving you more as a generic tool guide, if I can call it that, about what all is possible with digital. You will find this presentation to be fairly high level. However, if there are some of you who would like to continue the conversation, and you are at a stage with your ventures that you are willing to leverage digital, then you can connect with me offline, and I can have someone in my team kind of connect with you in a one-to-one setting, and they can actually work with you closely to give you the right recommendation as to what your marketing strategy could be, and how is it that the various Google solutions can help you for the specific objectives that you're gunning for. But yes, what you will definitely find in the presentation today and the discussion that I will have now is that it will give you an overview of the landscape. It will give you an overview of the various tools and the scale and reach of those tools and what they could do for you. I will also end with a few case studies to kind of talk to you about a few of your peers or few of your, startup colleagues who may be a little ahead of you in terms of their journey on digital, so that those can give you a good idea of how some of your peers have leveraged this for different results. And that's really where we'll end. And as Viral said, that while time is a constraint today, I'll be happy to kind of take questions, time permissible, towards the end of this presentation, or otherwise, like I said, if you are if you are at a stage with your startup where you would like to engage with us in a more deeper manner, you can always reach out to me separately. With that, let me begin with the first section of my presentation, which is really talking about how the ecosystem in India is changing. So Viral, if I can request you to go to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
This is the agenda. So yeah, we'll talk about how the digital landscape has become a necessity now. It's no longer an optionality, and how is that impacting the consumer behavior. And some of the changes that we've seen in consumer behavior were always happening in the last 4 to 5 years, but we've seen an acceleration of that happen in the last 12 to 15 months that we've all been experiencing. Where work from home, study from home has become more relevant. So clearly, a lot of these trends have got accelerated. The second piece is, talking about what the evolving needs of digital marketeers are, and how, what are the various variabilities that a digital marketer has to deal with and plan for. And the third section is really about giving you a very quick snapshot of various Google advertising products and what they can do for your startup. And the fourth one is some success stories and some case studies as food for thought for you. So with that, let me begin with the first section, which is about how digital is no longer optional, right? And like I said, some of these trends were already happening. So since Jio was launched in 2016, India has seen a rapid growth in data consumption on the back of growth in the internet user base, as well as the per capita consumption has been going up because the data charges are so low, right? India has one of the lowest data charges globally, and while the growth has been continuing for the last 4 years, today as we stand, we have almost 500 million internet users, and this is expected to go up to 1 billion users by 2025. Of this, we have 400 million people who use smartphones, and 100 million of these were added only in the last 2 years, right? And the data consumption has grown by 33% at a per capita level, and it is continuing to go up. The biggest change, and this is something that I think is a very interesting trend as we are observing it, is that the growth that we are seeing in the internet users, the new user growth, is actually driven by rural consumers. So we've actually seen that the user base in the rural has grown by 4x in comparison to the urban internet user. And this is something that has obviously been fueled by some of the, government of India initiatives like Digital India, like, UPI, Jandhan, Aadhaar, the, Jam Trinity that's been going on, because of which then, of course, you've had those, connectivity that the government has, laid down in terms of their optical fiber networks in the panchayats of the villages in the country. So this has really kind of aided the growth of user base. And this is something, like I said, is expected to go up to billion users by 2025. So moving to the next slide. Yeah. And the interesting part that's happening now is that while we have 310 million active internet users in the urban centers, there's a 66% penetration here and an 11% YOY growth. On the rural side, the penetration is still at 28% with 260 million active internet users. So the headroom that's available here for growth is very, very high. And correspondingly, the growth rate that we are seeing is obviously almost 4 times of the growth rate that we're seeing in the urban centers, right? So there is a 45% YOY growth rate in the users. And we already have a big segment that is kind of, so if you look at the two numbers, 310 million and 260 million, the rural internet user is inching very soon to get to be a good equal mix of the total internet users in the India, in the country that we have today. And if you were to look at the right side of the chart, earlier the growth in internet was driven by the 3 M's, as we used to call it. It was a metro phenomena, it was a millennial phenomena, it was a male phenomena. But now in the last couple of years, the trend is actually being driven by what we call as the 3 V's, which is voice, video, and vernacular. We are seeing a 10x growth in Hindi voice searches on Google search. We are seeing 75% of the mobile traffic that is there, the data consumption is actually consumption for video. And 95% of the video consumption is actually in vernacular. So if you were to kind of go back to the previous slide when I spoke about the numbers of, internet users that we have, which is roughly about 560 million. Out of that, 200 million are people who are, consuming video in Hindi. 200 million are, consuming video in vernacular language, and it's only the remaining that is consuming video in English language. So therefore, for each of your businesses, these are the 3 elements, or four elements, if I can call it that, that again, depending on which segment you're in, which industry you're in, which customer set you're trying to solve for, it's important to keep in mind these 3 emerging trends, or 3, actually not emerging trends, relevant trends now, which is voice, video, and vernacular. So it would do you well to keep this in mind as you're planning your own business and product strategies, and of course, marketing strategies. Moving to the next slide. In the last 12 to 18 months, this has been a very interesting time phase for all of us. We would have observed it as either business people, as entrepreneurs, or as consumers ourselves, right? The Indian consumer is changing in their own cultural nuance as well as their behavior, right? So there is a lot of pride in being who we are. So they are proud to be Desi. So they don't want to be behaving like someone else, and they want the brands and businesses to talk to them as they are in a very, very authentic way, right? So that is, I think, an important consumer trend to keep in mind. So again, some of these trends that you see on the slide are important to keep in mind. When we look at this slide, when we build it at Google, we build it from the context of understanding consumer behavior and, kind of tailoring it to the marketing, business leaders that we speak to. But for a lot of you who are entrepreneurs, I think these are important consumer behavioral trends to keep in mind as you're also planning your own growth strategies, your geography strategies, your product strategies, and service strategies. The second thing that we've seen is that people are not shy of learning, right? The amount of growth that we saw in search queries of how to do, queries. How do I cook this? How do I learn, this type of fitness? How do I learn this in gardening? How do I learn this in creating apps, for example? The growth that we saw in the last 1 year in terms of these type of queries, that I want to build my own website, I want to build my own app, I want to, learn something new. I think so. Those are things that are really going up. And that's something that's an interesting trend that's happening, which is, a do-it-yourself kind of a consumer behavior that we're seeing. We are obviously seeing, the rise of the Indian women consumer, right, across various age brackets. And, there is a lot of that that is coming through in terms of the type of search queries that we're seeing. It's also coming through in a lot of videos that are coming up, right? So if you were to go and look at videos on education, look at videos on, cooking, on things to fix around the house, etc. So the growth of the Indian woman as a key decision maker, as a key driver, is also going up. So that's something that's playing out. The other one that I already spoke about is the importance of vernacular. The consumption of content in local languages, in my own languages, is very, very well appreciated from consumers, by businesses, and by entrepreneurs. Balancing we and me. Right now, the consumer in India is becoming very conscious of the communities that we're all living in. there is a balancing act that they expect businesses and brands to play between not just talking to them about what they can gain out of this, whether as a consumer or whether the business is gaining something out of it for themselves, but there should be an element of what does this mean from a community perspective? Is this making the community better? Is this helping the community? So that is a very, very strong consumer behavior trend that we have seen play out well for a few brands. Actually, many brands who kind of adopted that tone in their messaging, who adopted that tone in their outreach to consumers, who and versus, let's say, some other brands who actually did not talk with this sensitivity considered, and that's something that we did see a stark difference between brands who did deal with this sensitively and the ones who did not. So I think this is a very important one, that it's important for you as entrepreneurs to keep in mind that the consumer is looking for a business to talk to them about the value that the business will bring to them as individuals or as families. But what is it that your business or venture is going to also contribute to the community, and how will that help? So I think that's important to keep in mind. The last one actually is a trend that we saw, and I'm sure you're all very well aware of this, that the consumption of entertainment. And when I say entertainment, I don't just mean videos and content on OTTs or the short video format content, but this also is content with regards podcasts, audio. It's content which is gaming, for example. So entertainment per se has been going up in consumption. We saw a huge spike last year in Q2, calendar year Q2, when the lockdown was there, and that did kind of taper off when the unlock happened, but it settled at a much higher level, almost 30% higher level than pre-COVID. And given that most of us are going through, as in our country is actually going through a similar situation, if not worse, we are actually going through a much worse phase right now. This is expected to continue to kind of come back, that people will be looking at consuming more content and more entertainment as we kind of tide this time, the current time. Moving to the next slide. Right now, as digital is becoming mainstay for our everyday life, the same is happening to the consumer journeys, consumer journeys by that. And there are many, many highly connected non-linear movements. So if you look at the top portion of the slide, this is how a consumer purchase journey really looked like earlier, where you kind of had an initial consideration set. This could be inspired or discovered through ads or because of word of mouth. Then you actually went out into the market and you actively evaluated the options that were available to you. Then you actually ended up making a purchase decision, and then there was a post-purchase experience. Now in the digital world, what has happened is actually there are multiple moments, and there are very, very connected moments, but these may not be linear, right? So it is very, very possible, and we're seeing this across all categories, right? That it is possible that your consumer will discover will discover some trends, either by what they are watching on YouTube or what they are searching or what they are reading on blogs or otherwise, and they're getting inspired. When they're getting inspired by the evolving trends, and they kind of go online and they're looking to discover new products, and they're trying to understand specific questions which are relevant to them, specific needs and concerns that they might have. They want to know more, and they want to know more with relevance to their own current situation and what they're looking for, and they want to then learn more about the products, and they learn more about the products from reviews, from other people who purchase these products, and how their experience has been. They also want to, oftentimes we've seen, they want to learn how that product is used before they actually go ahead and decide what products they should be comparing, right? So we've seen a lot of videos with regards tech products, hardware and software products, right? There are a lot of YouTube videos that are there on how to, let's say, set up a Wi-Fi at home, or let's say, how do you set up a mesh at home, and how do you set up. So there are many videos that people consume, And their comparison and consideration, happens across price points, across brands, across features, across reviews, across where it's available. What is a better site to buy it from? Should they buy it online? Should they buy it offline? Where can they get a better discount? So the comparison and consideration zone that they have, because now information is so easily available digitally without them having to physically go out and actually, find out the relevant information. They are expanding their comparison sets, the variables that they consider, and they're also expanding their evaluation phase. And then they, of course, based on recommendations, based on the comparison that they've done, they go ahead and actually make that final purchase decision. This purchase decision, by the way, again, doesn't necessarily have to be online. It could be online, but it could also be offline, and that's also something that we are seeing. That oftentimes consumers will go online and see where is the best deal that they're getting, and if they're getting it better offline, then they go ahead and just purchase it offline, or vice versa. And then once they've purchased the product, one of the other things that we're seeing in the digital world and the connected world, especially with millennials and Gen Z, there is a lot of information exchange that they like to have, in terms of their own experience of using the product, reviews. So for a marketer or for a business, it's important, equally important, as important it is to have, have your brand present at the discovery stage. It's equally important to continue that presence and continue to engage with your customers who've actually made the purchase decision, and have them come back and post positive reviews, or post reviews that will help your brand, will help your business enterprise, because that's something that is going to be very actively used in the comparison phase, in the consideration phase by the consumer. So it is important for every business, digital first or not digital first, to actually stay with your customer, make sure that the customer experience is delivered in the same level of efficiency, if not better, as it has been from the discovery phase all the way to purchase, and actually carry it on beyond purchase as well, because that's very, very critical. Moving to the next slide. Yeah. Now this is really just about what we've seen in the last 1 year in 2020, right? Because of many direct to consumer brands that have done really well. I mean, Mama Earth, Wow, Sugar are great examples of that, right? These people were actually able to compete in a category which was erstwhile a very, very competitive category, and had marketing dollars which were multifold of the marketing dollars that were available with these direct to consumer brands. But these direct D2C brands chose to go directly to their consumers, and they leveraged digital quite extensively to talk to the consumers directly. And we saw that kind of translate into tangible business results. So we actually, I mean, all of us, maybe these are stats that you're aware of, but India actually surpassed Russia and Brazil last year in terms of our number of online shoppers. So we had, as a country, 160 million plus online shoppers. 50% of India's internet GMV is actually now contributed to by e-commerce transactions, right? And which is why now in the whole commerce game altogether, right? So India has actually taken a leapfrog, and it has gone past Brazil and Russia, which were the other markets that we were competing with. So of course, US and China are the other markets, but we are now trending very, very high, and this is expected to grow almost 3.5 times further in the next 5 years. So clearly, e-commerce as a category, as a channel, is very, very relevant, and it's growing, and it has been seeing a lot of so we're seeing two type of trends, right? One, we are seeing more users come online. We are seeing more users come online from tier 2, tier 3 cities of the country, and we're also seeing an increase in GMV, right? So both are very positive trends. So if your business, let's say, for example, is in the space of e-commerce, this is definitely a phase to be launching your product and focusing on growth, because Indian consumer seems to now be at that juncture where this is already established itself as a significant play, and it will continue to grow as we go forward. Moving to the next slide. Yeah, so now as Indians are living online, there are two key things which every digital marketer has to think about, and this is the second section that we're starting off now. One is, who do you reach and how do you reach them? Right, so there are 500 million internet users available to you to reach out to through the digital means, right? So you decide as a business entrepreneur that what media do you want to engage with this customer that's available online. The second is content strategy. Given that video is so relevant and so large, sorry, please, if you can go back to the previous slide. Yeah, the content strategy, so you decide that what content strategy do you want to have. Video, of course, will remain very, very relevant. And, within video, you decide the vernacular strategy, the content strategy, that is something there. But other than video strategy, video content, there is always, other elements on blogs, on search, etc. And, you decide where you want to be. And of course, other than the YouTube properties that we have, you have other properties as well. You have OTTs, you have social media, you have many other platforms that are now available. So you decide what content strategy do you want to have. The third piece that every marketer has to decide is that amongst the 500 million internet users that I spoke about that are there online today, 100 million of them are actually the premium customers, right? Who are on the digital ecosystem multiple times during the day. They are spending on an average close to 1.5 hours every day on different digital properties, right? So how do you show up in their online experience is another third choice that you have to focus on. And the fourth one is your commerce choices, that how do you want to be available to purchase to your consumers. Do you want to go with a completely online option? Do you want to go with offline? Do you want to go with a hybrid model, which is a phygital model? Those are the choices. So as a business person, you decide who should be your customer that you want to approach. How would you want to approach them in terms of presence? Where do you want to be present? What content strategy do you want to have? And what commerce choices do you want to provide to your consumers? So that's the first decision that you have to make as part of your go-to-market strategy. The second one, which is moving on to the next slide, is really, once you've decided your go-to-market strategy, how do you build a meaningful customer acquisition strategy which gives you sustainability? Right? Sustainability in terms of your customer revenue, customer profitability, and sustained growth of this profitable customer, right? And the starting point of that, and it's like a continuous circle, right? It is continuously building better customer experiences and constantly using data to fuel your growth. So we work with so many of startups who kind of actually leverage the data that digital provides them on multiple times a day basis to check and fine tune their strategy, to figure out what's working. So there is they test this out from the type of products that they want to launch and what the consumers are responding to. They do this for A/B testing of their marketing campaigns. They do this to check whether like when they're trying to look at different objectives. Sometimes your objectives could be app installs. You could kind of try some of your experiments and investments in that. Then at the same time, you could also try out a user engagement, user retention, user profitability, those type of experiments. So those are, so use data to your advantage and use data to tell you where your consumer is, giving you more profitable growth and more sustainable growth, and kind of use that data to scale down where you're not getting the sustainable growth. And of course, use this data, to drive business outcomes. And just keep the loop going, really. So that's really how we recommend and we work. And I know this frankly was a very difficult slide to put together for us. I'll be very honest, because what it takes to design something specifically for a startup is very, very we can be very exact and we can be very specific. But then to try and convey the same message through a very generic and high level slide, this is what we then thought, kind of best captures how we look at designing specific campaigns and specific strategies with our startups, right? And but having said which, I want to be mindful of the fact that what you see here is a very high level representation of what actually goes into the the actual work that we do with many of the startups. And it's a fairly intensive and a deep partnership that kind of gets built in, because it is like a constant fine tuning that we do with many of our startups. Moving to the next slide. Okay, now is the third section, which is really talking about the various Google products that you can think of, and you can weave into your own business planning. Now, a consumer journey or a consumer's digital journey can start and end at different points of time, and it can kind of have multiple highs and lows in that, right? A consumer could start their journey with YouTube and then not do much with it, and then kind of come back on Google Maps, or then come to us for search. Or it could kind of start off at an app Play Store level, where somebody goes and looks for an app and downloads it, or it could be on Gmail, or it could be many of the properties that Google has. And as the consumer purchase journeys are becoming more complex, there are multiple moments that you can capture your customer. You could capture them for discovery, you could capture them in the high intent moments, you could capture them in the consideration zones. But there are multiple points in the journey that can be leveraged to get your brand top of mind, get your brand the outcomes of installs or engagement or retention or profitability that you may be looking for. And that, therefore, these are the new opportunities that you have to connect with your consumer. Moving to the next slide. Now, this is, just to talk to you about what's the scale of Google search, right? So every minute, there are 500,000 questions that are asked on Google search. Now imagine if there is a customer for you out there who is searching for your type of product or service. You have to definitely show up when they're looking for something. Either these could be by way of exact brand queries, but I'm guessing for the stage of businesses that you're at, you may want to capture non-branded queries that are coming in, so that your brand actually shows up before you start investing in building a much larger brand and having a much larger brand recall, right? So are you there when your consumers are looking for you? This is a customer which is an in-market customer. So are you leveraging this interest? And this in-market customer is really where search kind of plays a very, very strong role. So moving to the next slide. These are the top 4 things that you should think about when you think of Google search. You should be present on search across 4 key pillars. One is targeting. Choose the right customer audience, choose the right keywords, make sure that whenever your target audience is looking for the right keywords, your brand shows up, your company shows up. If there is a search on your category, that even within that, how does your brand show up, is the first thing that you have to solve for. And you can leverage keywords and targeting on ad campaigns to be able to show up where it's relevant. Second, of course, creatives. How do you show up in a manner that is useful for them when you're searching up? Do your creatives create a pull factor? Do your creatives provide an answer or information that is beyond what is being searched for? Do you show creatives which are highly customizable to the demographics? So, for example, we have many companies, and I'll take maybe Uber as an example, because it was one of the first adopters of what we call as Director's Mix, right? So we actually have this product called Director's Mix, which can, you can load many visual creatives. You can load many text options, and then you can have different demographics and different target audiences stipulated. And what this tool would do is that, with all the assets that you put into this tool, whether it's your video tools, video assets, whether it's your visual assets, whether it's your text ads and your, targeting, it will mix and match and show the most relevant visual, video, and text to the right target audience, right? So without you having to really manually manage all of this, you can just put it into that mix. And then the machine learning has an intelligent way of serving the most impactful messaging to the right audience. And that's the power of automating many of these things. The third piece, of course, comes is the bidding, because maybe many of you know that Google search actually works on the concept of an auction. So there is a bidding that happens, so there are real-time bids where different stakeholders are bidding for different keywords and different audiences. So, how do you set up real-time bids for each query? And, how do you come up top in the top 5 search results, for example, and not necessarily have to do this by spending the maximum amount of money, because one of the myths that exists about Google search is that it's expensive. Having said which, actually, if there are a lot of ways to organically show up without necessarily you having to pay a lot, or sometimes even have any kind of paid campaigns, but organically you can show up your business higher up in the quality score, as we call it. So when the auction is looking at a search query and is looking to throw up answers, there is this quality score that gets played out as well in combination to the bidding. And there are ways that our experts can actually work with you, or your respective ad agencies should be able to help you here as well, where we can work with you to show up how your own organic search quality scores can be very high, such that in the bidding itself, you may not have to dish out the most expensive money to show up at the top or in the top 5. So there are strategies around that. And the fourth one is adopting the right levers to drive automation and efficiency. So once you've kind of seen some of the setups that you've done with regards targeting, your creative and your bidding that's working well, after that there are many automation solutions that are available, which you can just automate and let the tool keep giving you higher efficiencies and optimized results. So that's the power and the beauty of technology, and that's the power of digital, that you don't have to fend for yourself when you're doing this. It is actually something that the system itself can deliver the most optimized solution for you. We have something called smart bidding. We have just recently launched something called Ads Go. So these are actual intelligent systems built into the machine learning that can throw up the most impactful campaigns for you, such that you show up higher on search for your product, for your category, for your customer that's in the market looking for something similar to what you offer. So that's the section on search. The second is on Google Display Network. Now, Google Display Network is actually envisaged as a remarketing tool largely, which essentially means that if there is some customer who engaged with your product or with your website or with your brand or with your app through the search journey, then you shouldn't leave that consumer. You should continuously show up to your consumer so that you remain top of mind. And it is quite likely that the consumer came into the market, searched for something, saw your brand, but after that, has decided to postpone or keep that purchase decision on hold for now. Now, GDN is very impactful there, because if your brand shows up at, their online journeys otherwise, on a blog that they're reading, or a news that article that they're reading, or a YouTube video that they're seeing, or there is, or they're reading a email that they've got, then GDN really helps you continue to engage with this customer who did show an initial inclination to engage with your brand and with your app or website. Moving to the next slide. So GDN, by the way, Google Display Ads actually gives you an unparalleled reach. It gives you access to 90% of the internet users globally. It is a fairly automated tool that has a very sophisticated machine learning, that powers it. The intent of this is exactly the point that I mentioned, that once the algorithm finds out that there was an initial interest in one of your consumers who engaged with your asset, the ad or website or app, then the machine learning has an ability to show up at meaningful moments, and in if you've kind of provided the right creative assets and the right text messages, it will show up in the most meaningful moments, and especially if you remember that earlier slide that I'd spoken about, where the moments of engagement with the consumer are now non-linear, then GDN is actually a great tool that allows us to engage with these consumer in these non-linear movements. And because this is intended to be a remarketing tool, it is actually biased towards performance, which essentially means that if you, let's say, are looking for a performance which is, as an example, is an app install, if that's what you're looking for, then it will optimize for itself. The machine learning will optimize for app installs. However, if let's say you're optimizing for in-app engagement or in-app actions, then GDN can actually be configured in such a manner that it optimizes for that. So that's the second product category or tools. And, again, bear in mind, I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, but, bear in mind that I'm just introducing the families of products to you here. I'm not getting into the depth of each of these products, because each of these products have multiple variations and multiple, various formats of the same family of products, which, can be configured in the most relevant and the most appropriate manner for your company and for your business. So at this point of time, I'm just concentrating on introducing these families of products to you. Moving to the next slide, please. The third one, which is the video, right? So India is definitely a predominantly video first market, right? So clearly, as a brand, as a company, it is a very, very important video destination that you should be thinking about. So YouTube, as of today, actually is 60% of the entire TV network. When I say TV network, I mean all Hindi speaking channels as well as vernacular channels and regional channels. So today YouTube has more than 450 million plus monthly active users. This is much more than a combination or the cumulative reach that India's largest 9 impact properties have, which is, a total of 293 million. So clearly the access of YouTube is far wider than many of the independent TV channels today and many of the high impact properties put together. So clearly, you should consider YouTube as a video destination. So for example, if you are thinking of TV to be an important and an integral part of your marketing strategy, I would strongly encourage you to look at YouTube because of the sheer reach that it offers you, and the fact that not only does YouTube have 450 million plus monthly active users, the time that a user spends on YouTube is far higher than many of the other channels and video destinations that we see put together. The third element that I will talk about is that we all understand that today's consumer is distracted, right? Usually any of us, all of us included, right, are always dealing with 2 or 3 screens at any point of time, right? Like I'm sure even at this point of time, while many of us are talking and we are seeing this presentation, but we are also constantly checking our phones. Similarly, the same thing happens if you're watching TV. We are also constantly checking our mobile phones and vice versa. So it's not just important to catch your audience on the medium that they're consuming content, but it's actually important to catch them when they're concentrating on a particular medium. And there are many studies out there that have actually been done that catching a user when they are spending time on platforms like YouTube, their concentration is much higher, and therefore it's easier to catch their attention versus when their concentration is divided, at best divided at least in 2 screens, to catch an attention there. Now on this slide, I won't talk through this slide, and maybe I'll just also take a pause because I've been speaking nonstop. But this really is a slide where I want you to focus on that if you do decide to leverage YouTube as a means of engaging with your consumer, which could be either through a paid campaign, or it could also be, let's say, if you decide to open your own YouTube channel and engage with your consumers there. This is a slide that really is talking about the ABCD, which is a recommended framework of how you can be relevant and be impactful for your audiences on YouTube. So the same principles apply for you to create an ad on YouTube, but they also apply when you're creating your own content on YouTube, which of course you can host organically without any charge, right? So I will pause there for like 30 seconds or a minute for you to just go through these ABCD. How do you attract the audience? How do you land your brand? How do you connect with your audience? And how do you kind of, direct them to an action? While you read this, I'll just take a pause and get myself a sip of water. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Okay, the fourth destination, for you to look at is the Google Play Store. So, given that we are an Android first market in India at this point of time, at least, Play Store is very, very relevant. 96% of people who mention App Store actually mention Google Play Store by name. So clearly, how do you kind of feature on Google Play Store, especially if you have an app, is what I will be talking on in the next slide. So if you can maybe move to the next slide. Yes. So, universal app campaigns is actually our very unique and it's something that only Google offers, which is really, so universal app campaigns actually is an automated tool which gets you the right audience and gets you the right app actions, if I can call it that, at different stages of your app journey. And this basically universal app campaigns is a very automated way of getting you the right action and the right desired result. So for example, when you're optimizing for installs, then USE will automatically find out in the first 2-3 weeks of running the campaign as to who is the most attractive customer for your app. And when they do find that out, then it will drive performance on app installs. And it has a way to leverage all of Google properties to deliver the right results to you. So USE will leverage Play Store, search, Chrome, YouTube, Gmail, Google Maps, everything, right? So all the properties of Google are actually leveraged in an automated manner through universal app campaigns. And this is, and especially if your business is app first, I would actually recommend this to be your the thing to look after and go after, right? Because this just makes your journey of growth very, very simple, because then USEs are optimized for apps, right? So from starting from app installs to user engagement, to user retention, to profitable users, to in-app actions, you can keep optimizing for these various steps, and it will have an automated way of delivering results to you, leveraging all of Google properties without you having to manually be worried about setting up these campaigns. So you don't have to, let's say, set up a separate Google search campaign, a separate one for YouTube, a separate one for Gmail, a separate one for app downloads, etc. Right? You can just set up one USE, and it will give you the right results, leveraging across all formats that are there. So this is, like I said, if you are an app first business or are planning to be an app first business, then USE is your go-to solution to get you the results that you're looking for. Moving to the next slide. Like I was mentioning, actually, I already talked about this. So if you're looking at, if you're a business and you're a product that is at a pre-launch, then you oftentimes want to optimize for user acquisition, for installs. So USE will optimize for that. As you move forward, you can look at, as you move forward in your life cycle, you can optimize for USE, for revenue, for consumer retention. And this is the stage when you're looking at growth, you could also potentially look at introducing a branding campaign. So for example, this is the time, or this is the place where you may want to look at a combination of branding campaigns on YouTube, or as well as a display network campaign to catch hold of the consumers who showed early interest, or let's say who downloaded your app or engaged with your app and then were dropped off, right? So so you can look at a combination of USE as well as branding as well as display network in the growth phase. And in maturity, you can optimize for search and continued spending on branding, because that's really where you would want to, and of course in-app actions, right? If you want to continuously increase profitability of consumers, so a combination of USE, branding, and search is what you may want to look at from a maturity point of view. But search also lends itself quite strongly oftentimes at the pre-launch stage. But like I said, if you are an app, then you can just go with USE and not worry about anything else at the pre-launch stage. And the way these campaigns can be built are also built in such a manner that you start small, look at the results, and then before you commit more dollars and commit more monies to it, you can already start optimizing and seeing results of what you've already spent. And as your revenue start coming in, you can start redeploying some of those revenues to get you further growth. So moving to the next section. Okay, so before I actually jump to the case studies and some success stories, I actually introduced this one additional section into the deck, which is really talking about how you can leverage some non-paid solutions. So there are certain solutions that are available from the Google stable of products, Firebase being one, for example. So Firebase as an attribution tool is a tool that gives you Firebase predictions, which can help you get insights into audience segments that are likely to make the next purchase. So it actually has an ability to create groups that can be used for notification and in-app messages. And it has an ability to give you predictions on how you can nudge some of the users who are likely to make in-app purchases, right? So Firebase itself can be used to get you growth without you having to pay anything for marketing campaigns. And, we've seen this be very, very relevant across fintech, online pharmacies, and other e-commerce apps. Moving forward. Of course, there is no, I think you would have heard this enough. You would have heard this from people who are product experts. You will hear this from us. The consumer experience on your website or your app has to be, has to be the hero of your story, right? So it is a mandatory and a necessary condition, but it is also a necessary condition for you to make sure that your app or your website continues to deliver an improved experience as your customers keep engaging with you. It is not something that you have to only solve for at the time of, acquiring the customer, but, it has to be something that is an ongoing endeavor. And which is why I said, the site experience or the app experience or the consumer experience has to be the hero of your story, right? So again, there are suggestions that you will get on Firebase on, how is it that you can simplify access to your app through login, that's simplified through Google login, or, through one-click checkout, or, through, optimization that can be planned for entry-level devices. Because while we have 500 million smart devices, there are many other users in the country who do not necessarily have the most evolved and the most sophisticated smartphone that is available. So your experience should be optimized for entry-level devices as well. So making sure that your site experience is actually a smooth and a simplified, as minimum steps in a consumer journey, and your site load time, for example. We've seen some studies that if a site load time is more than 3 seconds, you lose the customer. So are you optimizing for your site load times? Are you optimizing for your check-in? Is it a one-click check-in? Is it a one-click checkout? Is it an on-load? Is navigating your website easy? Is navigating your app easy? Those are some things that you have to concentrate on and make sure that if your consumer experience is very, very rich, then again, you will be able to attract a lot of customers and a lot of business without necessarily having to spend money on paid campaigns. Moving to the next slide. Yeah, I think we've spoken about this, right? So one tap sign in for Android and web. Autofill is one way to make your consumer experience simpler, so that there is less feed-in time. And those are things I'm sure most of you are fairly well aware of, so we don't have to spend time on this. This is just one case study of Rockbite Games actually leveraging Firebase predictions to feature items that could be purchased by cash, and they actually saw some very strong results out of these Firebase predictions. Moving to the next example that we have of something similar is actually Half Brick Studios. Again, they used Firebase predictions to increase their retention rates. The 7-day retention rate, they boosted it by 20% for this game. And many of us know that the gaming shelf lives are not necessarily very long. So even getting a 20% retention rate for 7 days is quite substantial and quite meaningful. And with that, we now move to the next section, which is about case studies. We have 2 case studies. One is a fintech case study, and the other one is actually a B2B, service tech this thing. So EasyPay runs a app called Paisa Nikal, and they basically offer cash withdrawal facilities or cash deposit and transfer facilities. They launched this last year when COVID was still causing limitations on accessing, on people's mobility, and they were able to actually. So they used our universal app campaigns along with geo targeting as well as vernacular campaigns. They launched their campaigns in 6 different languages, and they actually expanded their app in 15 states. They started off with 1 state, and they were so encouraged by the results, and so they were able to scale up to 15 states in a matter of almost 3 months only, and the results were very, very phenomenal. So they got 1.2 million app downloads, they had 27 million ad interactions, and they had 600,000 out of the 1.2 million, which is almost 50% in-app registrations that happened. So they actually have they were able to achieve the scale of 600,000 retailers who had signed up to be Easy Pay or Paisa Nikal, partners in 15 states, and they achieved these phenomenal results in a short period of 90 days. So from the first time when they launched it in the first state to scale it up to this level in 15 states just took them, less than 3 months. Let's move to the next one. This is an example of Pagar Book. Again, they used our universal app campaigns to, actually, so they started with app installs, and then they kind of took it forward to look at in-app action campaigns as well. And they were able to get a 2.8x increase in active users. And at the same time, they were also able to optimize and reduce their cost of acquisition by 30%. So again, very powerful results using our USC. So I've included just 2 case studies of universal app campaigns, but again, there are many other case studies that we have from search, from YouTube, from display network, etc. But because I wasn't too sure, again, what segments are we talking about, and who's there in audience today. So I've just kept it limited to this. And with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. Just 5 minutes over time, but happy to quickly take any comments, any feedback, any questions that you may have. But again, I will end my presentation by saying that it was intended just to be an introduction. I do realize that this may have been fairly high level for all of you, but then that is was a conscious decision to at least serve this as a right introduction conversation. And after this, if any of you are interested, we are more than happy to kind of have someone in the team engage with you subsequently. So with that, I will close my session and open it up for any question and answers.
Yeah, so ma'am, we have 2 questions on, like, I'll read out the questions.
Okay.
So one of the questions, how do you build deep connections with consumers on YouTube? So there are various durations of ad, like 6 seconder, 10 seconder, and 15 seconders. So
Yeah.
how do you build connections with consumers on YouTube with those?
Yeah, so there are 2-3 ways of doing this, right? So of course there are various formats. We in fact have more formats than just the so we have a bumper ad, which is the non-skippable 6 seconder ad, then we have 15 seconds, and we have 30 seconds. So those are largely, so again, depending on what you're aiming for. So if you're looking to build for awareness, then formats of bumper or 15 seconder are something that's recommended. If you're aiming for something which is more tangible in terms of an action, so for example, if you are actually looking at somebody to interact with your ad, let's say land up into an app download page, or land up into a place where your app can be downloaded, or land up into a website click, or land up into a lead that you want to capture. So there are various actions that can also be configured in what we call as YouTube for action ads, which are actually can be an extension of the bumper ads and the true view skippable ads, or the non-skippable ads we have. And those can also be introduced to make sure that the actions that you define are delivered on. But again, there are other type of formats under YouTube again that are available. So there are discovery ads. So if let's say you are looking at being present, because one of the interesting things that we're seeing is that earlier, most of the consumers who were wanting to search something, they began their journey on the search, on the Google search bar, right? But often now that we're seeing in the last 12 to 18 months, a lot of search journeys are actually beginning on YouTube. So again, depending on, so we have formats like discovery, which on YouTube can surface your brand, or people who might be might be searching for something that's related to your category or related to your offering. So there are various formats of discovery of the skippable ads and non-skippable ads, as well as YouTube for action. And brands kind of use these at for different objectives, right? And again, I can't simplify the answer more than this, right? Because it depends on what you're aiming for. Are you aiming for discovery? Are you aiming for awareness? Are you aiming for consideration? Are you aiming for an actual purchase decision? Because there will be something that we can offer for either of these stages of the funnel, marketing funnel, that is.
Yeah. Next question is more specific to tech companies. So anonymous, so like we don't have the name who asked the question, but they want to know what are the different brand building options for an early stage consumer tech company. How do they do sharp targeting for the most relevant audience, because given the budgets are very limited?
Depends on the segment that you're in, actually. Okay. So again, difficult to answer if I don't know the industry segment, but let me explain it to you with an example. So let's take Pagarbook as an example, right? So when we were talking to Pagarbook, Pagarbook is aimed at MSMEs. It is a tech solution that they offer, where they offer to MSMEs to manage the the salary and their employee records, right? So it's almost like like an HRMS kind of a system, right? So there you could create branding by way of search campaigns, where let's say it shows up as, so if let's say there is an MSME that is searching for HR solutions for or payroll solutions on Google search, then does your brand come up first? So search is one destination or one place that I would recommend. The other one that I could also recommend actually is YouTube. So there are a lot of channels on YouTube, or packs, content packs, that let's say your intended audience might be consuming. So for example, I'll give you an example, right? So there was this one company that makes agricultural tires, tires for tractors. So one of the ways, and they were wanting to launch in Europe. So one of the ways that we recommended them to create awareness and build branding for their thing was that there were a lot of these channels that were on agriculture and farm, for farmers. So we decided to run campaigns, branding campaigns for them on those channels. And then they can, of course, be, you can do sponsorships with those channels, you can do integrations with those channels. There are many other things that can be done. But to start off with, we decided to show up their 6-seconder ads on these channels that were being viewed by farmers, right? So those are other ways to create, branding for your company. But again, like I said, if I know more about the industry that you're trying to serve, who's your customer audience for the tech solution, then we can always find out where this audience is. What is this audience consuming on the internet? Could be video, could be otherwise. You could also find out, for example, what are they consuming with regards content. So you could also use Google Display Network or Gmail, for example, to show up in places where they're reading a content. So again, one of the examples that we were thinking of is, like, there was this one tech company that we were talking to, and they sell multi-million-dollar campaigns or contracts, which are 5-year contracts, and they show up and they wanted to be relevant to CTOs, the chief technology officers of large companies. So we targeted journals and magazines that these CTOs actually read. So then their ads started showing up there. So there are various avenues for us to do that. It'll be depending on what you're targeting, who your audience is, and what's your service offering.
And we have a couple of more questions. Do we have room to take them, or do we send a collated list of questions to you?
If you're sending me questions later, it will be helpful for me to know where it's coming from. Like I said, because it's difficult, as you would have imagined after seeing the content as well today, right? I mean, at a generic level, there's only so much that I can answer. If someone's looking for something more specific, and you are very sure that you are at a stage where you would like to leverage digital, then it will be useful for me to know what company and what stage you're at, and who's your, I mean, just understand what your offering is and what's your business plan. So if I can get those questions with the introductions of the companies, I think that would be helpful for me to, come back with answers.
Sure. Thanks a lot, ma'am. That was a very informative sessions for I'm sure a lot of us have had some pretty good insights and how to grow their business. I would request everyone to share a list of collated questions. I'll ask Sandeep to drop an email on the chat, so that we can have a collated questions there, and we will surely get back with with the answers. Thanks a lot, ma'am. Thanks a lot for giving your valuable time.
Thank you, Viral. Thank you, Sandeep. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.